How is it going, everyone? It's Caleb Limited here, and today we are going to be talking about a Super Nintendo video game. We're going to be talking about We're Back, a Dinosaur Story. Now, I have never seen this movie before. I have no idea what this movie is about. I think the person who played Fred Flintstone in the live-action version of Flintstones plays the dinosaur in the movie. That's really all I know about it. But I saw this video game, and I saw some gameplay of it, and it actually looks like a lot of fun. So I went ahead and picked it up, I played through it, and I have to say, I actually really enjoyed this game. I think that this is a really fun video game. I love the way it looks. I love its graphics. It's very bright, very colorful. You know, it has just a lot of bright colors all over the screen, and it looks great. I really love the way it looks. The actual gameplay is pretty fun. It's not perfect, but it has some cool ideas, and you're playing as a gigantic dinosaur, so what's not to love there? This is a platforming game where you're playing as a gigantic T-Rex, and you're trying to rescue some kids who get captured by like a mad scientist. And along the way, you are going through these platforming levels, and you can find these little like symbols of other dinosaurs, and you can pick them up, and you can actually call in those dinosaurs to help you get through the map, which is pretty cool. So, you know, there's one character that is a pterodactyl, and she'll like pick you up and carry you to the next location. There's one character that is like a triceratops, and he'll break down blocks. Like there's some walls that are specifically made out of blocks, and he can break those ones down. And then there's another character that drops these, like, I think it's called brain grain, which is a really weird thing, but it's important in this game, and he'll drop brain grain down your throat. And basically what that does is it gives your characters more attack moves. It will actually let your character have better attacks the more brain grain you consume. And eventually, if you have like max brain grain, it will actually just start healing your character instead, which is pretty cool. But the actual platforming and everything in this game, it's pretty fun. As the main character, you can actually like climb up buildings and stuff as well. Not everything is climbable, but quite a bit of things are actually. There's a lot of like floating platforms you have to jump on and try to get the platforming exactly right. A lot of the platforming is pretty fun and pretty forgiving. When you get to about halfway in the game, it really starts throwing in some really crazy platforming at you, and it is still fun, but it does definitely make it more difficult. There's like some parts where you actually have to kind of like walk on a floating balloon, and you have to walk with the balloon, and if you misstep, you can fall off the balloon and fall into a bunch of spikes, and you'll take damage until you die. And you have to be really careful in those sections. You know, there's a lot of areas where you're trying to jump on floating balloons too to get towards the end of the level. To reach the end of the level, you basically literally have to reach a sign that literally says like the end or something like that, and you have to do that. But if you're jumping on these balloons to get to the highest point of the level and you fall off of them, well, then you have to go all the way back and start climbing up them again. And while I wouldn't normally mind that, I do wish that there was a checkpoint system in this game to kind of make it a little bit more tolerable, because there's no checkpoints in this game. So if you die, for instance, you have to go back to the very beginning of the level. There's no checkpoint to really put you in the center of the level, you know, to skip a bunch of the platforming or anything like that. So that's a little bit of a negative, but for the most part, the platforming is pretty easy to get past until you start getting towards the really, really later levels. But I still really enjoyed this game for what it is. I've never heard really anyone talk about this game or anything, and I think it's kind of unfortunate, because it's really good. I don't know if I'd call it a hidden gem or not, but I just think that's a really competent game that holds its own. The boss fights are really fun in this as well. You are constantly fighting the mad scientist in these boss fights, and he has different types of machines each time you run into him. At one point, he has like this crane that has like a face on it, and you have to jump on the face to damage it. At one point, he has a blimp, and he's dropping like dynamite out of the blimp, and you have to try to jump on top of the actual character himself, the mad scientist who's hanging out of the blimp. You have to jump on his head to do damage to him. He has like a jack-in-the-box that he tries to send after you at one point, and there's all sorts of different weird machines that he has. Actually, at the very end, he has a mech suit, and the mech suit actually looks pretty cool. And there's some inventive ways to fight the boss, but I will say it definitely takes some kind of figuring out. It takes a few tries to figure out what you're doing exactly. I actually watched some other people play the game as well to see exactly how I needed to do things, because I couldn't figure out what I needed to do on certain bosses, so it helped to kind of see what someone else was doing to be like, oh, okay, so this is what I need to do. Because on the final boss, to defeat the mech, you actually have to turn on these like shields and stuff, and have basically the gunfire ricochet off the shields and hit the mech back. And I probably wouldn't have figured that out if I wasn't watching someone else play it. But honestly, even though I had to look up things to kind of figure out what exactly to do to defeat certain bosses, it didn't really take away the enjoyment from it, because, you know, I just played the game and I still enjoyed the challenge, because, I mean, it still wasn't easy to go through the boss fights. I died multiple times throughout this game. This game definitely is not an easy video game. I will say, the game doesn't control perfectly all the time. You gotta think, the dinosaur is really, really freaking big. So, you get on some platforms where if you slightly move this in one direction, your dinosaur will fall off the platform, because it's a huge pixelated sprite, and, you know, it's really easy to just fall off these really small platforms, just because, like, if you turn your character around, well, he doesn't turn around perfectly, you know, and stay in the same spot. He moves forward a little bit when you turn him around, so he just falls off the edge. So it's not perfect in that sense, I will say, but once you get used to it and you get the hang of it, it is a lot better. It's also not easy to always climb on everything or know what you can climb on. And when you're first playing through the game, it's not always easy to know what you can and can't stand on. That's something else I would say. But once you get used to it and you get used to the levels, and you actually figure out, like, the way everything works and what you can stand on, what you can climb, once you figure all that stuff out, it actually becomes a lot of fun to play through. So there are 3 different difficulties in this game. There's easy mode, normal mode, and then there's hard mode. I played through the game on normal mode, and then I went and tried it on easy mode to see how it was also. And from what I can tell, the only difference really is the actual how many lives you start with. And that's pretty much all I could really tell. Everything else seemed to be exactly the same, even the boss fights and how many hits it takes on the boss. Like, I felt like everything was still pretty much the same in terms of that stuff. Even the, like, regular grunt enemies that you run into still felt the same. There's quite a few different grunt enemies you run into this as well, and some of them are kind of surprising. There's some that are just, like, dropping bombs from a windowsill. But I tell you, I was very surprised the first time I ran up to, like, one of these fat grunts that was, you know, just walking around, and he just pulled out a gun and shot my dinosaur dead. I was pretty surprised when that happened. I was just like, holy crap! I didn't expect him to go all Turok on me and just start shooting the dinosaur, but you gotta watch out for some of the grunts, because the grunts can definitely get you. But you can take him out by either jumping on top of him. You can jump on top of him, hit him on the head, Mario style, and most of them take like 2 jumps on top of the head to be able to defeat. Or your character also has the ability to throw rocks, and that's really nice, because you can, you know, throw rocks at these characters, and you can hit them from a distance, so you don't have to worry about getting hit as easily. And if you get that brain grain, I talked about the attacks earlier that you can get a tail attack that you can use. Honestly, I didn't really use that much. When I got the tail attack, I still mainly just used the rock ability and just jumped on their heads, because I just thought it was easier than using the tail attack. And you also get the stomp ability, and the stomp ability basically will kill all the grunt enemies on the screen. It's a pretty useful ability. It also helps in boss fights, because sometimes you want to clear the screen of, like, all the rockets that are coming at you, and you can use that stomp ability to clear all the rockets that are coming at you during a boss fight. So it is helpful for that stuff as well. But for the most part, I think you can get by in this game pretty far with just using the regular, just, you know, stone throwing and just jumping on their heads. So overall, though, this is a fantastic game. I think that this is a game that you should definitely check out. It's a lot of fun. It has some cool level design. The level design is actually really, really good. My 2 favorite levels in the game would probably be the parade level. You're going through, like, a parade, and you have to, like, jump on balloons and stuff, and that's really fun. And it's really hard, too, because you do have to, like, walk on top of some of the balloons while they're moving. But it's fun to do. And you also have to jump while you're on the moving balloons, because sometimes they'll start sinking down towards the spikes, so you have to jump back to kind of let them float back up a little bit before you land on them. So that can be pretty difficult, but I do like those levels quite a bit. I like the Central Park levels as well when you're going through, you know, just Central Park in New York. That level's also pretty fun. And then I really like the subway level, which is, I believe, the second level of this game. You're running through a subway, and you have to be really careful not to, like, land down on the tracks while the subway is coming, because if it hits you, it's like a one-hit kill. You're done. So you have to be very careful there. But you can actually jump onto the rafters and wait for the subway to pass. Or you can actually go underneath the tracks, and you can go into, like, the sewer, and there's crocodiles in the sewer and stuff like that. So I thought that was a really cool course as well. Overall, I really like this game. I think it's a lot of fun, and if you can find it for $10 or under, definitely pick it up, because as far as I can tell, this game isn't usually very expensive. I picked it up for $8, so if you can find it out in the wild for less than $10, pick it up, give it a shot, and try it out, because I actually think that this is a very fun game that you should try out if you are able to pick it up for a fair price. So that is my review of We're Back, a Dinosaur Story. It's a fun game, and you should check it out if it's cheap. I'll talk to you next time. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.